we're up in the mountains again. It's always nice coming out into nature. You know, I live in a big city. We've been up here, and you've seen me up here. In winter, this could be like a 5 or 6 foot snowdrift. And here we are, it's probably, I don't know, 80 or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyhow, I thought I'll show you this drilling. I used, you know, you go through phases as a collector, or if you're interested in anything. This is made by Ernst Stiegletter in Berlin and Suhl, so I'm assuming he had shops in Berlin and Suhl. And one of the unique, well, there's a lot of unique things here happening, has the straight grip, truly handles like a shotgun. In fact, you probably, from your angle, it would look like a 12 gauge side-by-side shotgun, which it is. But it's also a drilling, and you can see the rifle barrel there. And that's in 22 Savage high power, which is actually an excellent round. When it came out in the Savage 99, and maybe others, people were astonished at the high velocity and the effects of high velocity. And so you had people running around with the 22 Savage high power, which is about a 70 grain bullet, slightly different bore dimensions than a 223 or 222. But yeah, so with the 70 grain bullet, it's still, you know, very high velocity. I'll show you the rounds in a second. And they were, you know, doing all kinds of spectacular things with tigers and whatnot. Entirely inappropriate for us, you know, a small bullet at what now is modest velocity. But at that time, it would have been maybe spectacular. You know, they were just in the midst of discovering the, in a way, magic of velocity. But getting back to the drilling, yeah, so I like the straight grip stock. That's unique. That's the only one I have that's a straight grip. It points, as you would expect, super fast. And uniquely, the gun maker's name is also on the scope, Ernst Stiegletter. It's on the barrels. And I don't know how you think, but for all of the things that I've seen, I have yet to find a quicker, simpler system. I know I've said this before, than the claw-mounted scope. This is not a very powerful scope, 2.5 power, something like that. But yeah, you just click and it pivots off. Very simple, very easy, actually. And then you could, you know, put it in a backpack or what have you. Now it's even more obviously what looks like a shotgun, right? And then you've got 2 sights here. There's a switch here, which I thought would raise the rear sight. Quite often they did. But in this case, no. All this does now is it gives you the rifle barrel. And I don't know how we would film this, but for people ask me, does it have bush firing pins? It does. And I can show you that another time. But you can also look up a bush firing pin is handy. That means the area around the firing pin has a bushing that's threaded in. So after a long period of use, the flames that come back out around the edges of the primer sometimes make cuts. And you could replace the bushing and then it would be like new. Anyway, beautiful, solid frame shotgun and rifle at the same time. So I said I would show you the rounds, and what's going to amaze you is we're actually not even talking about this. I'm mainly going to show you inserts, but I'll show you the round first. So this is 12 by 12, and then the cartridge is 5.6 by 52R, which is the 22 Savage high power. And the ballistics in this case are European ballistics. So the bullet is listed as 4.6 grams, which is 71 grains. Velocity is 850 meters per second. And the energy is listed in joules at 1,663. And then there are some respectable ballistics here. It looks to me like this would be a, about 100-yard, maybe a 200-yard cartridge, depending on what you're after. And I think it was mainly for roe deer was the idea. But there are other things, fox or what have you. Anyway, quite a nice looking round, kind of like a 30-30. That's what it reminds me of, with a small bullet. And yeah, if you load up one of these, you're kind of set for just about anything. But having said that, because of the scope and the iron sights, I got a hold of these inserts, which I thought would be of great interest to some people. So 12 gauge, 45 ACP. Just a perfect round, and 3-inch rifled barrel inside the insert. So what we did is we fired this, and I'm not sure what one's accuracy expectations should be. I've owned Krieghoff inserts for this kind of shotgun / rifle, and the Krieghoff inserts are just phenomenal. I had them in 22 Magnum, 22 long rifle, but they're far more complex because you're going from center fire to rim fire with the insert, whereas these are just center fire. You drop the round into the insert. So that's 45 ACP if you like the 45, and this is 44 Magnum, so you've got an awful lot more power here. And of course, with the scope, we actually did hit the steel plate a moment ago, had about 50 yards, no problem. So 45 ACP, 44 Magnum, and then one more 357 Magnum. And of course, this would also work with 38 Special. So for minimal cost, you can see it gets a little bit of powder residue from firing. And the 3-inch barrel seems to be more than sufficient to give you about 3-inch groups, maybe less if you're lucky, at 100 yards. And I'm extrapolating from our shooting at 50. So I thought I'd show you these because, that's pretty amazing. Ideally, you could have a single shot shotgun or a double or an over and under. I'm not sure about a pump, although some of the 3.5-inch Magnum 12s might not have a problem with these. I never checked. But you carry one of these, and even for just general plinking, it's kind of nice shooting 45 ACP. So I have the ammo here. I'll set these inserts down, and just to give you an idea, so what are we shooting? We'll be shooting American Eagle. People always ask me, 45 ACP, and then we've got some 44 Magnum. This is Hornady. Is this that Revolution stuff? Yeah, Lever Revolution, 44 Mag, 225 grain FTX. Well, it's kind of a really cool looking projectile. And then this I picked up at a gun show, 357 Magnum, Cellular and Bella. You can see the box is not in the best shape. And actually somehow the box is kind of glued to the ammo, but it doesn't matter. We still get it to work. So yeah, and then people will wonder, how do you get these empties out? Well, so far in the shooting today, I just take the insert out after firing, and I don't even have to use the Brownell screwdriver, which I brought along in case I needed to tap out the empty case, but so far unnecessary. So I think what we'll do is just shoot some of these at random, and then you can see it working. And it turns, especially a single shot shotgun. I wanted to bring my H&R topper, but it has no sights. So usually I can hit okay, but I thought better to use the drilling, which has scope and sights. And so then I know what's happening. And I don't want to like recalibrate my scope because it's set up for that 22 high power. So I, fire each of the inserts and figure out where the bullet is carrying to, and then I just adjust where I hold, which is another way of sighting in. And that way I don't have to worry about where the 22 Savage high power is hitting. All right, well, we'll break from the explanation of what's happening, and then we'll do some shooting. And I think you'll be surprised. These things are actually amazing, and especially that 45 ACP, useful beyond belief within its range, as everybody knows from the 1911. Anyhow, we'll head up there to do some shooting. So we set up our usual AR 500 target in the background there. And I actually started shooting with the scope on. And we have a lot of scope collectors on the channel, so I thought I would read to you. And this is a Carl Zeiss Jenna, and it says Zielviermi, Zielviermi. I've heard of the Zielvier, but maybe somehow I never saw MI on the end. Anyway, we set it up, and it's pretty straightforward to do that. But this is set up for that 22 Savage high power. So if you probably can't see the plate, but those shots in the top left or on the left side, those are with the scope. So as I explained, I think we'll just take the scope off and set it down, and then I switch to the iron sight, and with the iron sight, it seems to be right on. So this is the 357 Magnum, and it's that easy. Drop it in. That's what it looks like in the gun. Real simple. And then slam shut, safety off. Yeah, it just fell out again, which is kind of nice. I should have brought some 38 Special, but I didn't have any around. Yeah, it just seems to fall out without any, there's no lubrication on here or anything like that. So that's kind of interesting. I tend to be too gentle, with these break open guns. You have to make sure that you vigorously break it open, and then it cocks. So that's why we had that little hiccup there. And maybe I did it again. It's hard to tell. So you have to get it that last bit. So that's the 357. And yeah, I mean, 3-inch barrels, more than sufficient to stabilize. So I'll switch to the 45 ACP. And the 45 ACP, as you know, it head spaces on the mouth of the case, so there's no real rim. It's a rimless cartridge. Most of you know that. So that's 45 ACP, and yeah, I mean, so far it's kind of my favorite. But I've always liked 45 ACP. I have that falling block in that cartridge, and I just find it useful and inexpensive and fun to shoot. Okay, we'll switch to 44 Magnum. So this is the 44 Magnum, and so far, not scientifically, but so far, the 357 Magnum seems to be more accurate than the 45 ACP, which is probably true for a lot of rifles so chambered. And this is the 44 Magnum, which we've actually had pretty good success with at longer range, but just for filming, we may as well just shoot at short range, just so you can see what's what. Yeah, and that 44 Magnum, you can see how beautifully polished that chamber is in the adapter. That 44 Magnum is, well, easily, obviously, the most powerful of them. And you can see the effects on the target, and I can feel it with the recoil. Oh. These lever revolution rounds, in case you haven't looked them up, they make a big difference for trajectory because the bullets have kind of a Spitzer shape to them. Sure is easy going through a lot of ammo with these adapters, even though it looks like kind of slow, but and we collect all our brass. Some people write us about, in fact, we collect our brass and everybody else's brass too. Well, I guess that's good enough for today. Gives you an excellent idea of what's possible. So we went through 44 Magnum, 357 Magnum, and 45 ACP. I think I'll keep all three. They're, you know, useful just as they are in any other rifle or carbine. And maybe you found the drilling interesting. I think these are some of the most interesting firearms ever made. The lockwork alone. And now switching from the inserts to the 22 Savage high power with the scope on. I thought that might be of interest to you. And for shooting the rifle barrel, you have to move this lever over. It may not be very visible to you. That's the lever. You leave it like that for the shotguns and move it over for the rifle. So same target, a little further away. You can usually expect the rear trigger to operate the rifle barrel in most of these, although I did own one or two where the front trigger, so you just have to find out, of course, safely. Reminds me a lot of the 25-35 Winchester, but the 22 Savage high power, of course, has more velocity. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.